How did Samsung become the one smartphone company that Apple could never fully leave behind? For more than a decade, the global smartphone market has produced dozens of ambitious challengers. Some built excellent cameras. Some introduced bold designs. Some offered powerful hardware at lower prices. Yet most of them eventually lost relevance, withdrew from major markets, or disappeared from the competition entirely. Samsung did not. Even when Apple overtook Samsung in annual smartphone shipments in 2023, the result did not settle the rivalry. In the first quarter of 2024, Samsung returned to the top position, shipping about 60.1 million smartphones, compared with roughly 50.1 million from Apple. That reversal matters because it suggests something deeper than a temporary product cycle. Apple is widely seen as the company that defined the modern smartphone. The iPhone transformed the device from a communication tool into a platform for software media services and digital life. Apple also built one of the strongest consumer brands in history, supported by a tightly controlled ecosystem of hardware, software, retail, and services. Samsung took a very different path. Instead of concentrating on a small number of models, Samsung built a smartphone portfolio that stretched across almost every major price point. It sold entry-level devices in emerging markets, mid-range models for mass consumers, premium Galaxy S devices for direct competition with the iPhone, and later, foldable phones designed to open an entirely new category. To many observers, the explanation appears simple. Samsung became large because it sold a lot of affordable phones. There's some truth in that belief. Lower-priced devices gave Samsung access to customers Apple rarely targeted. They helped the company build distribution scale and visibility across markets with very different income levels. But that explanation is not enough. Low prices alone did not turn most Android manufacturers into durable global competitors. Many companies sold inexpensive smartphones. Some offered better specifications for the money. Others grew rapidly for a few years. Yet very few could compete in the premium market, maintain global distribution, invest in advanced technologies, and survive repeated shifts in consumer demand at the same time. Samsung could. It competed with Apple at the top of the market while also defending its position across the middle and lower segments. It moved quickly when larger screens became popular. It expanded fifth-generation wireless devices across multiple price levels. It invested in foldable displays long before those products became commercially significant. And when individual models failed to dominate, the company remained strong enough to adjust and return with another generation. That raises the real question. What allowed Samsung to keep competing when so many other smartphone companies could not? Was it simply the Galaxy brand? Was it the scale created by cheaper devices? Was it faster product development? Or was Samsung drawing strength from something larger than the phones consumers could see? To understand why Samsung became Apple's most formidable global smartphone rival, we have to look beyond the specifications of any single device and examine the business system operating behind the entire Galaxy portfolio. The answer begins long before the first Galaxy smartphone appeared. Samsung did not enter the smartphone era as a young technology company looking for its first breakthrough. By the time Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, Samsung had already spent decades building capabilities across consumer electronics, semiconductors, displays, home appliances, and global manufacturing. Smartphones would eventually become one of its most visible products, but they were never its only business. That difference shaped almost every strategic decision that followed. When Google's Android operating system emerged as an open platform, dozens of manufacturers gained access to the same software foundation. On paper, this seemed to level the playing field. Any company could build an Android smartphone. In reality, the software was only the starting point. Success still depended on how quickly a company could design products, source components, manufacture at scale, distribute globally, and adapt to changing consumer demand. Those capabilities were far more difficult to build than installing the same operating system. Samsung recognized this opportunity early. Instead of treating Android as a finished product, the company treated it as a flexible foundation upon which it could create an entire family of devices. Rather than competing with one flagship model, Samsung expanded across nearly every major segment of the market. Consumers looking for their first smartphone could find an affordable Galaxy device. Professionals seeking premium performance had the Galaxy S series. Users interested in larger screens found the Galaxy Note. Later, early adopters curious about new form factors were introduced to Galaxy Fold and Galaxy Flip devices. Each product served a different customer, but together they formed a portfolio designed to cover markets with very different purchasing power, usage habits, and competitive conditions. This strategy was particularly valuable because the global smartphone market was never uniform. Consumers in North America, Western Europe, India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa often prioritized different combinations of price performance, battery life, camera quality, local distribution, and financing options. A company relying on only a handful of products could excel in one region while struggling in another. Samsung attempted something much more ambitious. It built a presence across mature and emerging markets simultaneously, working closely with mobile carriers, electronics retailers, and regional distributors to ensure that Galaxy devices were available almost everywhere smartphones were being adopted. The company's annual reports during the early years of the smartphone era consistently emphasized expanding product lineups, strengthening regional competitiveness, and responding rapidly to changing consumer demand rather than depending on a single best-selling device. At first glance, this appears to reinforce the common explanation that Samsung simply won by selling phones at every price. But there is an important distinction. Offering many products creates opportunities, yet it also creates enormous complexity. Every additional device requires engineering resources, manufacturing capacity, software support, logistics, supplier coordination, inventory management, marketing budgets, and after-sales service. A broad portfolio can just as easily overwhelm a company as strengthen it. The smartphone industry provides many examples of manufacturers that expanded aggressively before collapsing under rising costs, fragmented product lines, or declining profitability. Samsung expanded without suffering that fate for more than a decade. That suggests the company's competitive strength cannot be explained by the number of Galaxy models alone. Somewhere behind that portfolio was a deeper capability that allowed Samsung to manage complexity at a scale that most competitors could not sustain. The turning point appears when Samsung's smartphone business is viewed alongside the rest of the company, rather than in isolation. Most smartphone manufacturers purchase critical components from outside suppliers, assemble finished devices, and compete primarily through product design, software features, pricing, and marketing. Samsung certainly does all of those things, but it also occupies another position in the industry. It is one of the world's largest producers of technologies that smartphones themselves depend on. Samsung Electronics manufactures memory chips used across the global technology industry. Samsung Display has long been one of the leading suppliers of advanced smartphone displays, including organic light-emitting diode panels used not only in Samsung's own devices, but also by other manufacturers. The company also operates semiconductor fabrication facilities, develops image sensors, and invests heavily in advanced manufacturing technologies. These businesses are separate operations with their own customers and commercial objectives. They do not exist solely to support Galaxy smartphones. Even so, their presence creates an environment that few competitors can replicate. Instead of waiting for an external supply chain to mature before introducing new products, Samsung often develops manufacturing knowledge, component expertise, and production experience across multiple businesses at the same time. That does not mean Samsung always supplies every component inside every Galaxy device. Nor does it mean internal divisions automatically receive preferential treatment. Commercial relationships, costs, and technical requirements still determine many sourcing decisions. The advantage lies somewhere else. When a company continuously manufactures displays, semiconductors, memory, and finished consumer electronics at global scale, knowledge moves across organizations much faster. Engineers gain earlier experience with manufacturing challenges. Production teams accumulate expertise through repeated execution. Investment decisions can be justified by serving multiple industries rather than depending on a single smartphone model. Scale also changes the economics of experimentation. Launching one new device is expensive. Launching an entire portfolio requires even greater investment. But once manufacturing capacity, supplier relationships, research facilities, and global logistics are already operating at enormous scale. Introducing additional product variations becomes less disruptive than it would be for smaller competitors. This helps explain why Samsung could pursue strategies that many rivals found difficult to sustain. The company introduced multiple flagship devices within the same year while maintaining broad mid-range and entry-level lineups. It continued investing in premium display technologies before they became mainstream. Later, it committed to foldable smartphones through several product generations despite modest early sales, refining the technology year after year instead of abandoning it after initial market uncertainty. The same pattern appears in production. Large shipment volumes allow purchasing teams to negotiate component contracts across many product families. Manufacturing facilities can operate more efficiently when serving numerous devices instead of relying on one flagship cycle. Research and development spending can support technologies that eventually spread throughout the broader Galaxy portfolio rather than remaining confined to a single premium model. Individually, none of these decisions guarantee market leadership. Together, however, they create a reinforcing system. A broader portfolio generates higher production volumes. Higher volumes justify larger investments in manufacturing and technology. Those investments improve the company's ability to introduce new devices across multiple market segments. Each successful generation strengthens the resources available for the next one. By this stage, Samsung's competitive position begins to look very different. The company's success is becoming harder to explain through pricing alone or even through the popularity of individual Galaxy smartphones. The evidence increasingly points toward a much larger engine operating beneath the products consumers see on store shelves. At this point, it becomes clear that comparing Samsung and Apple product by product only explains part of the story. The more revealing comparison is between two fundamentally different competitive systems. Apple has built one of the most focused business models in modern technology. It limits the number of products it introduces, tightly integrates hardware and software, controls the customer experience from design to retail, and reinforces that experience through services such as the App Store, iCloud, Apple Music, and Apple Pay. Every new iPhone strengthens an ecosystem that encourages customers to remain inside it. Samsung competes from a different position. Rather than concentrating its resources around a small number of products, Samsung spreads its capabilities across multiple customer segments, price levels, technologies, and geographic markets at the same time. The objective is not to win every comparison against the latest iPhone. The objective is to remain competitive wherever smartphone demand exists. That distinction changes how Samsung's earlier decisions should be interpreted. A broad portfolio is often viewed as a marketing strategy. In reality, it also functions as an operating strategy. Every successful Galaxy model contributes production volume. Higher production volume supports larger investments in manufacturing facilities, research, supplier relationships, and distribution networks. Those investments make it easier to introduce additional products, experiment with emerging technologies, and respond to changes in consumer demand across different markets. The cycle then begins again. More products create more scale. More scale supports greater operational capability. Greater operational capability allows faster commercialization of new technologies. New technologies refresh the portfolio and sustain market presence across multiple price points. The portfolio is therefore not simply a collection of smartphones. It becomes part of a self-reinforcing business system. This also explains why Samsung has repeatedly entered categories that initially appeared uncertain. Foldable smartphones are one example. The first generations were expensive, technically challenging, and sold in relatively small numbers. Judged only by short-term sales, the investment could have appeared difficult to justify. But for Samsung, each generation also expanded manufacturing knowledge, improved display technology, strengthened engineering capabilities, and refined production processes. The commercial success of any single model mattered, but so did the accumulation of capabilities that could support future products. The same logic applies to many technologies that eventually move from premium devices into broader product lines. Innovation is not treated as a one-time event. It becomes part of an operational process that continuously converts engineering advances into products serving different customer groups over time. This perspective also explains why many Android competitors struggled despite launching impressive smartphones. Several companies produced devices that rivaled or even surpassed Samsung in individual specifications. Some offered better value at certain price points. Others briefly captured consumer attention with distinctive features. Yet sustaining that momentum required far more than designing one successful device. It required coordinating manufacturing, component sourcing, global logistics, software support marketing, retail relationships, and continuous investment across multiple product generations. That level of coordination proved extremely difficult to maintain. Samsung certainly faces its own disadvantages. Managing hundreds of product variations increases organizational complexity, raises software support costs, and can reduce profit margins compared with a more focused product strategy. There is nothing automatic about making such a system work. What distinguishes Samsung is not the existence of complexity, but its ability to organize that complexity into a repeatable competitive capability. Seen from this perspective, Samsung's strength is no longer best understood as the result of cheaper phones, faster imitation, or even isolated technological breakthroughs. Those factors matter, but they derive much of their power from a much larger operating system that allows Samsung to compete continuously across an industry where products, technologies, and customer expectations never stop changing. Seen as individual products, Galaxy smartphones and iPhones often appear to compete feature against feature. Seen as businesses, however, they reveal two very different approaches to creating long-term competitive strength. Apple concentrates extraordinary resources on a tightly integrated ecosystem, where a relatively small product lineup reinforces customer loyalty, premium pricing, and recurring services. It is a model built around depth. Samsung has pursued breadth. Its smartphone business has expanded across multiple price segments, distribution channels, regional markets, and product categories while remaining connected to a much broader industrial foundation. That foundation includes advanced manufacturing, semiconductor technology, display innovation, global supply chain management, and the operational experience accumulated from serving millions of customers with very different needs. This distinction explains why Samsung has remained Apple's most persistent global rival even as the smartphone industry has repeatedly changed. The market has moved from feature phones to smartphones, from fourth-generation wireless technology to fifth-generation wireless technology, from plastic designs to premium materials, from single cameras to sophisticated multi-camera systems, and now toward artificial intelligence-enabled devices. Throughout those transitions, individual products have succeeded or failed. Entire categories have emerged and disappeared. Competitors have entered the market with impressive hardware before gradually losing relevance. Yet Samsung has consistently adapted to each new competitive cycle. That resilience cannot be fully explained by lower prices, nor can it be explained solely by successful flagship devices. Instead, the evidence points towards something more fundamental. Samsung competes through a system capable of repeatedly transforming manufacturing capability, component expertise, engineering knowledge, and operational scale into commercially viable products across a wide range of markets. Each generation of devices strengthens the experience needed to build the next generation. Each expansion in manufacturing supports future innovation. Each improvement in production capability makes it easier to commercialize technologies that might otherwise remain experimental. The smartphone is therefore not the starting point of Samsung's competitive advantage. It is one expression of a much larger industrial capability. That perspective also changes how market leadership should be interpreted. Quarterly shipment rankings rise and fall. Consumer preferences evolve. Premium market share shifts. New technologies continuously reshape expectations. None of those outcomes permanently determine which company possesses the stronger competitive foundation. What matters is whether an organization can continue adapting after each market transition. Samsung has demonstrated that capability for more than a decade, not because every Galaxy phone has been the industry's best product, but because the company built an operating system capable of supporting continuous competition on a global scale. Perhaps that is the most important way to understand Samsung's position today. Many companies try to build a great smartphone. Far fewer succeed in building a business that can repeatedly create, manufacture, distribute, improve, and scale smartphones across changing technologies, changing economies, and changing consumer expectations. That is why Samsung has remained Apple's most formidable global smartphone rival. Not because it won every product battle, not because it always led the market, but because it developed a manufacturing and operational system powerful enough to sustain competition long after many other challengers had disappeared. When people look at Samsung, they often see a collection of Galaxy devices. The deeper story is that those devices are the visible result of an industrial system whose greatest competitive advantage is not any single product it creates, but its ability to keep creating the next one.